G'day there. Welcome to the closing bell on the 31st of March for me. Maybe pinch and a punch for the first day of the month for you. Um, and markets are rallying, um, and it's sort of interesting where they're rallying from, isn't it? We're keeping a close eye on these levels, aren't we, above and below the market that I've been setting out for you in this S&P 500. This being the S&P 500 daily chart. I'm just really keeping a close eye on that 200-day moving average at the moment, but because you can see it can be quite volatile around it, really whipping everyone out and making life difficult. But once it does break away, you can see that you either get, to the downside, can really get hammered. And once it does break away to the upside, that can be the beginning of uh, another big wave to the upside. So how it trades around this 200-day moving average is very important. And what you don't want to do is be bullish here, bearish there, bullish here. You're going to get whipped all over the place. But understanding that this is sort of an important time right now, how it trades around this and what happens from here can be big, is the way to go. And really, the main thing that I'm focusing on is the fact that after being bearish recently, and look, I've been bearish through this period, haven't I, over this last month, really setting up, wondering what was going to happen below here. And look, this is where the banking crisis hit, wasn't it? So this was a really dangerous time when the banking crisis evolved, SVB, Credit Suisse, etc., etc. But what happened was the people who basically make up the rules, the central bankers, change the rules. So when they start changing rules, you have to really back off and think, right, has this rule change settled things down and changed the technical picture? So rather than being, well, banks go under, Credit Suisse goes under, they don't change any rules, and we were looking down the barrel of, breaking below last year's low and heading to Crashville, um, has the change of the rules saying banks can park their underwater treasuries at the Fed at par, get their money for a year, settle things down, liquidity crisis over, um, rates near a peak, growth might slow, maybe not too much. Markets could settle down here and say, well, that was the crisis and they changed the rules and have saved everyone and life can carry on. Well, that is still a potential from here due to the technical setup. And that's what I've been really trying to explain to you is these lines in the sand. And I'm going to show you in a minute some gold stocks and even some lithium stocks and stuff like that, because there is a bit of a rally going on. It could carry on for a bit. I'm aware of that. And we've got some good lines in the sand where we can say, right, well, if let's say you're bullish in this daily S&P, I've been pointing out to you that below 3,800 is quite dangerous from here, just with the fact that we are still in this downtrend. And we've had a short-term uptrend, which is still intact. This little uptrend here, which is going up into selling pressure, which I've told you about this selling pressure that we've just seen. Now we're turning up again, back above the 200-day, and this little uptrend is still intact. So what changes that picture is if it turns down and busts below 3,800. Below there is where things can really get hammered, and there's last year's low. Below there is lights out. So by knowing that, by having a good line in the sand here around 3,800, if you are bullish and you're saying, well, the daily trend has just turned up, we're starting to bounce off that 200-day moving average. Look, we've got the key sort of levels above here. They're not that far away, are they? 4,200 is the first sort of level above which I'll be going, and this is interesting. And then around 4,350 above there is where I can actually start saying that this thing could be doing something like this. And, who knows, down the track, maybe that turns down. Don't know. But just bigger picture, it's still saying that it's marching higher in this short term. And you could be seeing a tradable run going on here. You probably will get a kick higher through there, and maybe that's enough to kick it through that 43.50, and this could last months. I don't know whether it's going to turn into a massive bull market or turn and ultimately get hammered. But, a move like that is tradable, which is my major point on this for sort of short-term traders. So I'm pricking my ears up. I'm interested in gold because the little gold stocks haven't been running, even though gold is up near the all-time highs. And I think there's a few things pointing to gold possibly, moving higher from here as we reach the peak in interest rates. And I think the banking crisis could actually get worse, and there'll still be a safe haven bid. And look, there's a bit of interest coming into commodities and things as well, I'm noticing. But look, this could be the beginning of a bit of a run. I'm aware of that and actually trading it. But yeah, the lines in the stand remain, which are above the market, and 43.50 in that US market. Really the point above which I'm thinking, gee, it is changing the picture of this downtrend. And that's the major thing I guess I want to point out. This downtrend is still intact. Whatever this does now, as long as it doesn't take out that high, it can wiggle around and do what it likes. Do this and then turn back down, and that overall downtrend will still be intact, marching down with lower lows and lower highs. So it's sort of in this, middle bit, this no man's land, but just noting it's above the 200-day moving average. Daily trend is starting to turn up, and just noticing some buying coming in to a few different sectors. So I'm just going to finish actually with the gold stocks for you. And here is the gold price on a weekly basis, and doesn't look too bad, does it? And this is the all-time high. Not that far away. Pretty interesting that gold stocks are in the doldrums in such a big way. I think the speculative money has really flown out of the market, and people aren't that interested because they've been burnt over the last few years. But this is where opportunity knocks. And if we're just looking at the way this has moved, just looking at the major waves, and we've had this correction. And you know that I look at the midpoint of the correction. That's the point of control for me, around which prices oscillate. And then I'm looking at the low of the correction. I'm waiting to see a clear out below. That's where a lot of people get cleared out of positions. And then I want to see the false break of that level in direction of that longer term trend. And that's where you get your risk reward entry point. So in Retirement Trader, we bought a couple of stocks, a couple of big ones, and they've been flying, going well. And just this week, I've actually bought a few speculative gold stocks because they haven't been running, but the gold price has been picking up. You can see this weekly trend quite nice as it rallied back to that point of control and then carried on. We've got a bit of selling pressure, but that's gone back to the moving averages. We've got a weekly buy pivot, and then we got things blast off. So this all marching higher quite nicely. It's obvious it's in the danger zone where it is now, because it's in the sell zone of, let's say, that correction or of that wave, all sort of a similar spot, which is the sort of 75 to 87% retracement of those waves. So it's up in there. Music could stop and we could be in for a bit of a worse time in gold before recovering. And really the major line in the sand for me in gold from here is back below that low around 16 below 1650. Below there, I'm going to stay constructive on gold and consider that we've been in a 2.5-year correction, and there's the all-time high. So whatever it does here, I think, a bit of weakness, but then I think the breakout, and look, you're looking at, a potential big, long, strong uptrend through there. It's possible. So just starting to pick up some of these beaten up gold stocks. So let's have a quick look at a few of them. So I just wanted to kick off by looking at a few of the sort of smaller stocks out there. Oh, you see this one's starting to pick up, Rox Resources. Just give you a sense that the big buying, doesn't look like that gold price, does it? With these little companies still under a bit of pressure and not really turning up in a big way. Some of the larger cap companies have been going well, but just, going through and just having a look at a few of these. I mean, Capricorn Metals has been flying, no doubt about that. Red Metal starting to pick back up, looking interesting. But just showing you a few of these, and so you can see how they're looking as far as they're not really starting to run yet, are they? Musgrave not really moving. Look at Matador, it looks in trouble. I quite like Westgold. Resources looking pretty interesting. A few others. Kingston still in a bit of trouble, but looking a bit more interesting. But you can see still in long-term downtrend. Aurelia Metals, up 17% today. But have a look at it on the long term, this monthly chart. Still in the doldrums, isn't it? So a lot of these stocks, they haven't, this is Chalice, and we're actually in that. But that's a much larger company, isn't it, than these little piddlers. But you can see there's a few that are running, and Bellevue looking pretty interesting, isn't it? Evolution, a large company, they're starting to run. Resolute Mining, really starting to move, 41 cents, looking pretty interesting. These companies with, high costs, when the gold price starts rallying, their margins can increase quite rapidly. But Regis not really running when it's fallen from 650, still down at $2. The long-term trend about to shift. Looking all right. SBM, they've had their own problems, haven't they? St. Barbara, still really not looking like they're running hard, are they? Still in long-term downtrend. Gold Road's looking quite strong. But you can just notice that a lot of these companies aren't really running that hard. Perseus, a brilliant company, running pretty hard. Ramelius starting to pick back up. Look at that, 126. So that's been a nice turnaround. But, a lot of these other ones, just not as exciting as you'd think they should be. I've just been buying a few of these, so I don't want to comment too much. But just to show you, things are still in the doldrums in quite a few of these. If you can pick some of these smaller cap gold stocks that are starting to turn, there is a few good opportunities out there. But again, I've just bought 3 of them in one of my services, so I can't really tell you which ones they were. Just join my service and you can find out. That's easy. So just showing you that these gold companies looking interesting. I've even been looking at a couple of these lithium companies. We've got Green Technology Metals just came out with an all right result from their drilling. Looking at the weekly on this chart, I think quite interesting. These are the sort of charts I'm seeing out there where you've had these big retracements. And you can see that where it is trading now, weekly buy pivot happening within the sort of buy zone of a major wave. And this is the area that I get interested when I'm looking at these waves. I'm starting to look at the fact you've got the sell zone there, buy zone there, prices oscillating back and forth between the sell zone and the buy zone. And, you're basically expecting it to move back to that point of control and possibly all the way back up to that sell zone. You've got the weekly buy pivot coming in, looking pretty interesting, something like that. And even another little lithium, looking another one because we had that takeover during the week. So there's a bit of money coming back into that space. And again, you can see if I'm looking at the correction we've seen in this one, I'm just thinking about, what's the area where I'm interested. This sort of buy zone is not a bad spot. We've got the weekly buy pivot coming in, a bit more money coming back into that. I'd expect that to be heading back towards that point of control. So, just a few little interesting stocks because we've had such a smashing out there. A lot of them have come back to the areas where I get interested. And once we do see the momentum turning back up, they start to come up on the radar. All right, well, that's, I think, enough for the week. Don't know even how long I've chatted for. Hopefully you're still listening. And I'll come back with more next week.